the European Parliament is saying that they don't want to be funding repression in Tanzania. And they're saying, according to this resolution they passed today, that the election in Tanzania was neither free or fair. President Samia Suluhu Hassan received 98% of the vote there, though many in Tanzania say there's not much of an election. That's not possible. The turnout number they declared was not possible. And CNN's investigation has shown police using excessive force against protesters there, killing some who did not pose a threat, some of whom were running away. There are some who were killed while in their own places of business or even in their own homes. And what European lawmakers are now calling for is for the European Commission to stop funding the government of Tanzania and to redirect that funding to human rights defenders, to civil society who are working to restore the democratic space in the country. They're also calling for the European Commission to consider sanctions against those responsible for the recent democratic backsliding in Tanzania.
The situation between the European Parliament and the government of Tanzania has entered a new and highly scrutinized phase after lawmakers in Europe issued a strong resolution questioning the political environment in the East African nation. Their position, according to the document adopted during their latest sitting, is that they no longer want European funding to indirectly support what they describe as a climate of repression. The resolution argues that the most recent election process in Tanzania lacked credibility and transparency, and that the results announced did not match what observers and citizens on the ground described. President Samia Suluhu Hassan received an overwhelming 98% of the vote, a figure that many citizens, civil society groups, and independent observers believe did not reflect the realities of participation, competition, or turnout. Several Tanzanians interviewed by international media said there was barely any active political contest, and that the turnout number released by authorities appeared impossible based on what people witnessed on Election Day.
Week when the internet was shut down, the media gagged, and people could not move around the country, Kim.
A CNN exclusive investigation has found evidence that Tanzania police killed protesters in the aftermath of a disputed election. Tanzania's general election at the end of October was the trigger for week-long protests that rocked the country. Thousands filled the streets, claiming the election was unfair. In the violence that followed, many did not return home. A forensic examination of videos and satellite imagery reveals police killed protesters. CNN's Larry Madowo has more, but first we want to warn you this report contains some very graphic video.
Election Day, Tanzania. Bloody scenes across the country. The streets have become a hunting ground.
This is what the police have done to the people.
Security forces crack down on protesters, angry at the government of President Samia Suluhu Hassan amid claims of an unfair election.
Investigations carried out by CNN and other international organizations documented incidents of police officers using excessive force against protesters during and after the election period. Footage and testimonies revealed disturbing scenes, including unarmed citizens running away as shots were fired, individuals struck during crackdowns, and others caught in violence while they were inside their shops or even in their own homes. These accounts became part of a growing body of evidence used by human rights groups to describe an environment where basic freedoms were difficult to exercise safely. Videos analyzed by investigators showed cases where the use of force did not match the level of threat posed by protesters, and several deaths were recorded during the unrest. The European Parliament's resolution highlights these concerns and frames them as part of a broader trend seen in the past years. Lawmakers say Tanzania is displaying signs of what they call democratic backsliding, a term used when institutions, civic space, and political freedoms begin to shrink instead of strengthening. This includes the treatment of opposition figures, journalists, human rights defenders, and activists who speak openly about government policies. According to the resolution, individuals in these groups have increasingly faced harassment, arrests, intimidation, and in some cases, allegations of extrajudicial killings or disappearances. The document also points to the continued restrictions on media outlets, both traditional and online, which have been affected by shutdowns, suspensions, or regulatory pressure. A key concern emphasized in the resolution is the case of opposition leader Tundu Lisu. Once seen as one of the country's strongest political voices, Lisu has been imprisoned since May on charges of treason. If convicted, he could face the death penalty. His arrest has received wide attention both inside and outside Tanzania. Supporters say his detention is politically motivated and aimed at silencing dissent, while authorities maintain that the charges follow legal procedures. However, his situation has become one of the central examples cited by international rights groups in arguing that Tanzania's political space is no longer open or fair. The European Parliament resolution specifically mentions his case as a reason for urging stronger international pressure on the Tanzanian government. European lawmakers are now calling for a major shift in how the European Commission engages with Tanzania. Instead of providing direct support to government institutions, they recommend redirecting that funding towards civil society organizations, independent human rights defenders, and groups working to protect democratic space. According to the resolution, continuing to send funds directly to the government risks indirectly reinforcing the same structures accused of restricting freedoms. Their proposal is to empower local organizations that monitor human rights, support victims of abuse, raise awareness, and help strengthen the institutions needed for democracy. Another major part of their demands includes the possibility of sanctions. This means the European Commission may consider placing targeted measures against individuals deemed responsible for the situation. These sanctions could include travel bans, freezing of assets, or other limitations designed to pressure political and security officials allegedly involved in abuses. The idea is that people in positions of authority who play a role in repression should feel consequences on an international level. However, the resolution does not automatically impose sanctions. It simply urges the European Commission to study the options seriously. The resolution also includes a call for an independent investigation into the election process, the conduct of the security forces, and the treatment of citizens before, during, and after the voting period. Lawmakers insist that transparency is crucial for rebuilding trust, and that Tanzanians deserve an election whose results truly reflect the will of the people. They emphasize that political competition, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and a free press are essential elements of any democratic society. These rights, they say, must not be restricted or removed in the name of stability. For many across the international community, including African civil society groups, Tanzania occupies a unique place in East Africa. The nation has long been respected for its historic role in supporting liberation movements, hosting refugees, and maintaining relative peace compared to its neighbors. That is why the latest concerns from Europe and global human rights organizations have received such attention. The idea that Tanzania might be drifting away from democratic principles is concerning not only for Europeans, but also for many Africans who see the country as a strategic and stabilizing force in the region. Inside Tanzania, reactions to the resolution have been mixed. Supporters of the government argue that Europe should not interfere in Tanzanian affairs, stressing that every country has its own political processes and legal frameworks. They also claim that international media coverage often focuses on negative narratives while ignoring the government's development efforts and reforms. Meanwhile, opposition supporters and human rights activists see the resolution as a long overdue acknowledgement of their struggles. They believe external pressure may encourage more accountability and help open up civic space that has been narrowing in recent years. As the debate continues, one key question remains: what impact will this European Parliament resolution have on the ground? While the European Parliament can express its position, the European Commission holds the power to decide whether to implement funding changes or sanctions. That process often involves discussions, assessments, and diplomatic consultations. Therefore, the immediate effects may not be visible right away. However, the political message itself is significant. It signals that Tanzania's internal issues are no longer viewed as isolated domestic concerns, but as part of a larger conversation about democracy, human rights, and international partnerships. For Tanzanians, the future of their political environment will depend on what steps the government takes in response to these concerns. Dialogue, transparency, and reforms could help restore confidence among citizens and international partners. On the other hand, continued tension between the government, opposition groups, and the global community may deepen divisions and lead to more scrutiny. As it stands, the resolution has become a marker of international alarm, raising fresh questions about the direction of Tanzania's democracy. On Voice of Africa, we'll be watching closely, especially as the story continues to develop and new statements emerge from European institutions, Tanzanian officials, and civil society organizations. The key now is whether this moment will open the door to improved democratic space or further polarization between the government and its critics. Either way, Tanzania's political future has become a subject of global attention, and the coming months will be critical in determining how the situation evolves.